Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure that today we are not only just praising ourselves, but that we have found somebody else from far away and abroad to at least, we hope, shed some praise on our project from England. And it's not just somebody, it's Professor Howard Hotson from the University of Oxford. He's Fellow and Tutor in Modern History there. He's also a Professor of Early Modern Intellectual History. But most important, he is the Director of a very important project. I always look at it as our sister project, the Cultures of Knowledge, an intellectual geography of the 17th century Republic of Letters. Professor Hotson invited us, I think it was in March 2010, because he wanted to know what was happening in Europe with a view on the geography of the International Republic of Letters. And I think, I wouldn't say it was love on first sight, but we liked one another from the beginning. And I think that the collaboration that began, especially between Charles and Howard, I think that will be a very important stepping stone for the future of this project. And I really hope that we will get the chance to build it into the enormous epistolarium that we need if we want to answer these big questions that we're all interested in. But now the floor is for Howard.
Well, here's the first sign of collaboration. Charles is very kindly going to get my PowerPoint presentation up in a usable form. And I can start by reassuring Wynand that if his objective was to bring someone here who's going to sing the praises of the epistolarium, well, then he's certainly found the right person. That's exactly what I intend to do. It's a great pleasure, in fact, to be invited to assist in the unveiling of this wonderful piece of work. A project worth celebrating not only as a major scholarly achievement in its own right, but also, and this I take to be my central role here, as a contribution to a growing international effort to create a digital Republic of Letters. My task today, if I understand it properly, is not primarily to introduce this wonderful piece of new scholarly infrastructure, as Charles has just done, but rather to contextualize it. And the scale of the context in which I propose to put these remarks is testimony both to my sense of the importance of what the epistolarium represents in its current form, and also a testimony to the kind of thinking embodied in it and what that might achieve in the future if conditions continue to be favorable. The basic argument I'd like to sketch out is actually a very simple one, and it can be reduced to two main points. The first is that the communications revolution of our own day equips us for the first time to fully appreciate the communications revolution of the early modern period. And the second is that, just as that earlier revolution created a new kind of intellectual community by transforming the ways in which scholars could communicate and collaborate with one another within and across international boundaries, so likewise the ongoing digital revolution opens up unprecedented opportunities for multilateral and indeed multi-layered international collaboration and scholarly community building as well. But let's proceed in chronological order by beginning with the early modern communications revolution and its implications for the early modern Republic of Letters. For convenience sake, we might propose to bracket this process between Gutenberg and Oldenburg. The former is famously credited with the invention, or rather the European reinvention, of the printed book in Mainz. The latter is responsible for publishing the first specifically scientific journal as secretary to the Royal Society in London. And between them we have a third and no less important longer-term development, the popularization of the familiar letter. Let's see if I can figure out how to work this. Oh, sorry. Popularization of the familiar letter as a means of scholarly exchange, and the development of means of exchanging such letters increasingly accessible, reliable, and affordable to ordinary scholars. Together, these new means of communication transformed the way in which scholars interacted knitting them together into a new international scholarly community, the Republic of Letters, fundamental to the intellectual vitality of the period and documented most intimately by the immense quantity of learned correspondence it left scattered across and beyond Europe. The geographical dimension of this system of exchange is perhaps most obvious. It spun a web of reciprocal communication from one end of Europe to another and beyond it to Asia and the Americas. Yet correspondence was equally embracing thematically. While a formal treatise moves through a compact body of knowledge in a disciplined and orderly way, any letter can leap abruptly from one topic to a seemingly unrelated one, thereby displaying the pursuit of knowledge with an immediacy rarely replicated elsewhere. Correspondence could also bind together very different sorts of people, including many who had never met or indeed would not care to mix socially. Princes and aristocrats, gentlemen and scholars, diplomats and office holders, physicians, apothecaries, clergymen, school teachers, students and their tutors, printers and booksellers, merchants and travelers, instrument makers, craftsmen, alchemists and astrologers, all these and many more jostled together in the most representative correspondences of the 17th century. So nothing, I would say, illuminates the intellectual life of the period in all its geographical, thematic, and societal range more brilliantly than the hundreds and thousands of learned letters scattered across and beyond libraries and archives in Europe. And hence the enormous problem currently driving innovation in this field. The enhanced capacity of ordinary scholars to disperse corpora of manuscript letters across and beyond entire continents posed scholarly problems which print technology has proved unable to solve. The age of print, to be sure, provided excellent means for publishing definitive editions of edited, annotated, and sometimes translated texts. But it was less well adapted to providing means of tracking down and cataloging the letters themselves, and for providing efficient means of navigating, analyzing, and visualizing the immense quantities of data in this field. Digital technology, then, offers enormous advantages in piecing back together the mosaic of the Republic of Letters from these innumerable scattered tesserae. Information technology can help us locate, reproduce, collect, describe, catalog, transcribe, edit, analyze, and visualize the texts themselves, as well as the prosopographical, geographical, and chronological metadata describing them, the networks constituted by them, and the discussions taking place within them. In short, it can help us assemble the big data needed to map out the shifting configurations of the intellectual activity in a manner in which they can be readily analyzed, visualized, and rendered comprehensible for the first time. As a consequence, especially within the past 5 years, web-based projects and resources for studying early modern learned correspondence have been proliferating at an astonishing rate. Here you have the correspondence being distributed across the world, and here we have some impression of the way in which digital editorial projects have been proliferating in the last 5 years. Institutions, projects, and individuals are publishing catalogs, archives, and editions of great variety, and beginning to develop, and indeed to fantasize about, the tools needed to help them master this extremely rich but extremely fragmentary literary heritage. I can't do justice to this proliferation here, but here are a few headings to give you some notion of the variety of these projects, and there are dozens of them. Digitized national union catalogs are now available, perhaps the finest example being right here in the Netherlands, the Catalogus ePistolarium near Landicarum in The Hague. Institutional catalogs of manuscript letters are likewise available in digital form. A good example, the Royal Library in Copenhagen, or for a rather different sort of an enterprise, the Royal Society in London. Other major institutions have concentrated on collecting data on particular figures, such as the 4,000 letters to and from Galileo and his disciples, assembled at the Museo Galileo in Florence, or the 20,000 pieces of Leibniz's correspondence being assembled at the Leibniz Bibliothek in Hanover. Digital catalogs are available, or currently under preparation, for any number of major early modern correspondences. Francis Bacon, Pierre Bayle, Theodore Beza, Thomas Bodley, Antoinette Bourignon, Robert Boyle, Tycho Brahe, to mention only a few of the B's. The list of major catalogs of correspondence available in digital form keeps expanding every time you look. Some of these catalogs are complete with archives of digitized manuscript correspondence, such as Clusius, Constantine Huygens, Kircher, Linnaeus, and Peiresc. Others include diplomatic or normalized transcriptions, such as the wonderful Newton Project. Others are complete with huge collections of printed as opposed to manuscript correspondence, such as the 50,000 letters in the Corpus Epistolicum Recentioris Aevi in Heidelberg and Mannheim, or the 60,000 critically edited letters published by the Electronic Enlightenment in Oxford. 5 years ago, the Electronic Enlightenment project was joined by 3 other major projects, exploring the application of information technology to the study of the Republic of Letters, which emerged independently and virtually simultaneously in the last months of 2008 and the first of 2009, and have been working closely and productively together ever since. The Circulation of Knowledge project here in the Netherlands, the Mapping the Republic of Letters project in Stanford, focused, as its name suggests, especially on the fascinating challenge of visualizing big data in this emerging field, and the Cultures of Knowledge project, generously funded by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation in New York and based in Oxford. Now, this astonishing proliferation of resources raises 2 acute questions for the future development of this field. First question is how to bring all of this material together into a single pool of data which collectively maps out a representative cross-section of the early modern Republic of Letters in all its variety. This is a daunting task, central to the efforts of early modern letters online in Oxford, but if broken down into manageable parts, this problem can, I believe, be overcome. To sketch out a solution briefly, librarians, archivists, scholars, and IT systems developers from leading institutions across and beyond Europe need to be brought together to discuss, amongst other things, scholarly desiderata, metadata standards, technical options, legal arrangements, editorial protocols, visualization techniques, and the challenge of outreach. I'm happy to report that we've just been invited to submit a full cost application designed to finance just such a discussion over the coming years, in which the Circulation of Knowledge project will certainly have a very important and central part to play. Solving this first question, however, will only increase the urgency of the second one. If this ocean of existing data and metadata can be brought together in standardized form, then how can we render it navigable, comprehensible, and applicable to new scholarly and educational uses? It is especially in response to this question that the Circulation of Knowledge project has been blazing the trail, and it is here that the Epistolarium provides such a splendid indication of the way forward. Scholars working with large correspondences have always wanted to map, graph, and visualize their basic catalog metadata in order to get some kind of an overview of it. The problem is that doing so by hand is an enormously tedious and laborious process. Oh, sorry, here I've mixed my own slides here. An indication of the way in which technologies we're using to bring together metadata in the early modern letters online project, and some impression of the galaxy of major 17th century intellectuals that we are hoping to bring together in one place. Here, moving ahead to an indication of the kind of problem which has plagued scholars in this field for some time. This hand-drawn map of Leibniz's correspondence, okay, so scholars have always wanted to map, graph, and visualize their data, but doing so is an enormously tedious and laborious process. This hand-drawn map, which represents the state-of-the-art of our sort of cartographic visualization of Leibniz's correspondence, is an enormous undertaking, given that there are 20,000 letters represented here. A labor of love and an invaluable orientation to this field. But amongst its greatest achievements is to raise so many fruitful questions. How did this network develop over time. A single map lacks this chronological dimension. How was it shaped by Leibniz's own extensive travels? Mapped out on a separate map here. A map such as this cannot show the way in which Leibniz scattered and received letters as he moved from one place to another. How does geographical location relate to social status, profession, or confessional allegiance? To show this, we need prosographical information rendered visual on this map in some kind of comprehensible way. His discussion of some of the topics listed here concentrated in specific geographical regions or confessional communities. Here's where we need topic modeling in addition to capacity to map and analyze our metadata. The difficulty is, of course, that every such question can only be answered by recounting all 20,000 letters and redrawing the map, something that humans are very slow to do, but which computers can do virtually instantaneously. The technology being pioneered by the epistolarium will revolutionize our capacity to test hypotheses such as these by allowing scholars to expand or contract chronological, geographical, and thematic parameters at will, thereby opening up all manner of fresh questions and perspectives. The first instance on stationary correspondence, secondly on more itinerant figures like Leibniz or Grotius or Christian Hawkins, ultimately in whole communities of wandering intellectuals writing to one another about an encyclopedic range of questions as they move across the map of early modern Europe, propelled by fresh opportunities for study and exchange, as well as by the Reformation's wars and revocations of the period. Finally, the sophisticated topic modeling capacities of the epistolarium open up the possibility of capturing not only who is writing from where to whom, but also what they're writing about. And at this point, I think it's fair to say that the head really begins to spin, since this pioneering work on topic modeling does not merely answer the long-standing desires of scholars in the field, but has begun to surpass their wildest dreams. It's like the holy grail of scholarship in this field. Set in this broad international context, therefore, what the epistolarium provides is the first fully operational model of the basic suite of tools for an analysis and visualization of epistolary data and metadata, which everyone working on large catalogs of correspondence will now want instantaneous access to. And once their sense of the potential of this technology has been awoken, I think we can safely predict that there will be no turning back. Scholars familiar with these basic and extremely user-friendly tools will soon be clamoring for third and second generation visualizations. So here's a sample of the sort of things that Charles has shown us already. Second and third generation visualizations, capable of mapping prosopographical as well as epistolary metadata, for instance, and of projecting them on maps of physical, political, confessional, and economic geography of early modern Europe, to give another example. The prospects for further development are limitless, as is their potential capacity to project the results of cutting-edge scholarship into the classroom and into the broader public sphere. So the significance of the epistolarium resides both in what it has accomplished to date and in the breathtaking further vistas which it helps to open up. A machine-readable corpus of 20,000 letters to and from some of the most important intellectual representatives of the Dutch Golden Age, equipped with a suite of state-of-the-art analytical tools, is an enormous boon to scholarship in its own right. And it will certainly be bookmarked on the computer of every scholar working seriously on 17th century intellectual history. But likewise, a still broader significance lies in the way in which those 20,000 letters provide a test bed on which to begin developing the tools needed to make sense of the far larger bodies of digital data and metadata which will be assembled in the near future. In the next phase of the development of this field, therefore, the responses to these two questions, it seems to me, will feed off one another. The more epistolary data and metadata is available, the more invaluable these kinds of tools will become. And the more powerful these tools become, the more scholars will want to access them by putting their own data and metadata into a system interactable with it. The ingesting during the current year of, in the context of our hopeful digging into data grant, the metadata from CKCC, from Mapping the Republic of Letters, from Early Modern Letters Online, linking them all back to the texts in the Epistolarium, will be a first concrete step towards building an axis of collaboration between these projects, which could help structure a great deal of further work in this field. And it seems to me that the future work in this field is bound to involve even more extensive international collaboration than it has in the past. The field is far too full of potential and moving far too quickly for any one project to do everything. The collaborative collection of data and metadata must be complemented by the collaborative development of tools needed to interrogate, analyze, and visualize that material. Through this process, both scholarly research and technical development will organize themselves increasingly, I think, around major nodes in an international network of projects such as those I outlined earlier, collectively developing and populating a revolutionary piece of transnational scholarly infrastructure on which cutting-edge scholars increasingly do their research, assemble their material, collaborate with one another, and indeed publish their results. And this returns us to my opening suggestion about the two communications revolutions, old and new. Just as the communication revolution of the early modern period permanently changed the way in which scholars have communicated and collaborated with one another ever since, this new communication revolution will change the ways in which scholars communicate, collaborate, and publish their results in the near future. This, parenthetically, is the way we have sought to develop EMLO from the start. And you can see here, going back to 2009 and 2011, images of our early technical workshops in which some of the people in this room were present alongside, for instance, in this case, Nicole Coleman of the Mapping the Republic of Letters project, Skyped in from Stanford in California. So what, I might ask in conclusion, is the natural place for the Netherlands within these fast-moving international developments? Well, historians' view of the future is, of course, based on a glance at the past. In the early 16th century, sorry, I think my slides are the wrong way around here. In the early 16th century, Erasmus won for the Low Countries a central place in the emerging Republic of Letters. By the mid-17th century, the Dutch Republic was no less central to international student travel and the scholarly book trade. At the end of the century, a similar centrality had been gained in the world of learned journals. And this is where the Netherlands stands today. If we look at these images of the geography of the world's knowledge, graphic illustration of the hugely disproportionate share of the world's journals published in this country. If you look at the English language, the Dutch, and the multilingual journals, you can see here that the Netherlands in the center there, but also represented in the side columns, punches way above its weight. And here's an even more impressive representation of the number of scientific journals by publisher, with Elsevier and Springer with an even more disproportionate share of the market. And as this brilliant map of scientific collaboration suggests, an equally central place is found in the contemporary Res Publica Literaria as well. In fact, nowhere on this map does the light of learned collaboration shine more brightly than in the very place where we're meeting today. This is a final fitting image, I think, giving us a glimpse also of the future shape of resources which could be assembled and analyzed and visualized within an international digital repository on the early modern Republic of Letters. One can easily imagine expertise and resources flowing in a similar kind of configuration, first into major national centers in a manner vividly suggested here, particularly by the role of Paris on this map, and then dispersed from there throughout a broader network. But one can also see here the prospect of more complex patterns of radically multilateral collaboration, such as those characterizing the huge arc stretching down the Rhineland, linking England on the far side of the Channel with Italy on the other side of the Alps. I look forward to the day when we can map in similar fashion not only the involving patterns of the early modern Republic of Letters, but also the modern Republic working with these early modern materials, evident, for instance, in the provenance of data flowing into a modern digital repository of data in this field. And further Dutch work can build on this uniquely impressive foundation of the ePistolarium, and this project, which set out to study the circulation of knowledge and learned practices in the 17th century Dutch Republic, can play a significant role in shaping the circulation of knowledge and learned practices in the 21st century, not only in the Netherlands, but within the field of historical and humanistic scholarship right around the world. So it's a great pleasure, therefore, to help mark this major milestone in the process of harnessing new technologies to create a new digital Republic of Letters. And I'm sure, to skip to my final slide, at last, that I can speak for colleagues in Oxford, Stanford, and indeed a rapidly spreading network of partner institutions elsewhere in offering the architects of this magnificent project our warmest congratulations. Thank you very much.